Greetings. Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to Exodus 20 today. Last week we covered Exodus 18 and Exodus 19. Raul we talked about last week in 18, and 19 we talked about Israel's seed coming to the wilderness of Sinai. Israel's seed came to the wilderness of Sinai. It's there that Jethro, as he's called in Torah mostly, Raul, he's called in Yeshua mostly, came to him in the wilderness of Sin with Zipporah and his two sons. I want to read something to you. It says, and Israel's seed, I'm reading up here on the right, and Israel's seed proceeded from Rephidim, encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. This is at the mountain, or at the Elohim's mountain. It says in the 3rd month from their going forth from Egypt. And at that time, Raul the Midianite, the father-in-law of Moses, with Zipporah his daughter and her two sons, his sons, for he had heard that the wonders of the wonders of Yehovah which he had done in Israel, and that he had delivered them from the hands of Egypt. This is happening in the wilderness of Sinai. But here's a case where we see chapter 18, chronologically speaking, is coming after chapter 19. Here's chapter 19 that we went through last week. In the 3rd month, after Israel's seed had gone out from the land of Egypt, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they had departed from Rephidim. They left Rephidim. Rephidim is where in chapter 17, Moses smote the rock at Horeb and provided the water for an entire year at our base camp. That's Rephidim. That's where right now our women are at, our children are at, and the Ger who dwell with us and their families are at. Oh my goodness, you know what? We get so confused because we see Israel's seed and we think the children of Israel. B'nai Israel is not the children of Israel. I want to show you something. In chapter 17, we, the congregation of Israel's seed, this is a combination of, no, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. We're going to work up instead of down. I was going to work backwards. I want to go to Exodus 12. You know, we've got to see this. If we don't understand who Israel's seed is, the children of Israel, oh my goodness, it's so perverted, you guys. We can't see it. Here is the congregation of Israel's seed being instructed by Yehovah concerning Passover. Look at what it says. Verse 3. Speak to all the congregation of Israel's seed on the 10th day of this month, every man. We're talking about men. He's going to pick the lamb for the amount of people, men, again, in each man's household. Look at here. Verse, I believe it's 19. For 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats what is leavened, that same person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. Look what it says, whether he is a Ger or an Ezra of the Eretz, native of the land. we're talking about the Ezra. This is the congregation of Israel, made up of two kinds of men. Yes, these men have families, women, children, perhaps even servants. Look at verse 37. We came out. Israel's seed came out, journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot. 600,000 men. Men. This is Gabor, Gaborim. Mighty men. On foot. Besides, tough. Doesn't talk about the ladies, does it? Because they're one with their man, but they're not talking about the ladies. The 600,000 men are men. Some have women, some don't. Then it says a mixed multitude. We saw when we did this that we were talking about men again. We were talking about mixed heads of families. Look what it says about the Rav. This says mixed. Rav, and then here's Rav. Rav is the word that means master. Look what it says. The pictograph resh is the picture of a head. The bet is a picture of a tent representing the family. Combined, these mean head of the family. Each family has a master that rules all cases. Trials, conflicts, contests. This person was the representative for the whole tribe, one abundant in authority and wisdom. This is the heads of the families. These are men that are coming out with Israel's seed, the 600,000 men. This is the congregation, combined is the congregation of Israel's seed. They went from here to, look what it says right here, 16, Elohim. Elohim is where the congregation of Israel's seed was fed manna in the wilderness. But it was only, you know what? I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back for this thing. Let's just stick with this congregation of Israel's seed. They, the congregation of Israel's seed, they can also be the congregation of Israel, same thing. Israel is Israel's seed. In 17, they moved from the wilderness of Sin, where they got the Ten Commandments, or where they got the manna, and they went to Rephidim. Rephidim is where they all said they were hungry, and Moses was told to strike the rock. I did it. Strike the rock one time, and the water came out. From there, we went to, oh no, take it back. That was Rephidim. This is our base camp. This is our base camp. But this is the congregation of Israel's seed. Just like it was the congregation of Israel's seed who went from Ramses to Elim. Then we came to our base camp. That's Rephidim. We're going to be here for a year. But in 19, it was only Israel's seed who had gone up to the wilderness of Sinai, verse 2. So Israel camped there before the mountain. Remember I said, the Israel seed, verse 1, and verse 3, it's talking of verse 2, it's talking at the end of verse 2, it's talking about Israel. Israel camped. Israel and Israel's seed are one and the same. It was there that Moses left the camp, went up to the mountain of Elohim. Elohim gave him very specific instructions. He says, you have seen, speak to, what does he say? Let's see. And Moses went up to Elohim. No, and Moses went up to the Elohim. And Yehovah called to him from the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and Israel's seed. I'm making this blue because I want you to see who Yehovah is talking about throughout the whole course of this chapter. It's Israel's seed, the Ezra men. We saw that very clearly at the end of Leviticus 23, like verse 42 and 43. Second and third to the last verse. It said that he made Israel's seed dwell in tents so that the world would know that it was the Ezra who he made dwell in tents when we came out of Egypt. The Ezra are Israel's seed. Never forget it. Do you want to have communication with Yehovah, man? You've got to become the Israel seed. He's not talking to the Ger. He's talking to the Ezra. Oh, if I could just help people understand this. Look what he's going to say. Verse 4, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians. This is the words he's given to Moses to give to Israel's seed. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you out to myself. Therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant. This is what he's saying. If you will obey my voice and keep my covenant. What's the covenant? That's Passover. We do it every year. Then you will be a special treasure to me above all peoples. We will be the segula above all peoples. Remember, they're the special treasure, the unique possession that Yehovah holds close to himself. It says, and you shall be a kingdom of priests. There's no lady priests. These are the words which you shall speak to Israel's seed, his Ezra men. Well, he came back down the mountain. Look what happened. What did the people say? So Moses came and called for the elders of Israel. He's talking to the elders of the people. They're men. And laid before them. What did the people say? All that Yehovah has spoken we will do. What did he say? If you will obey my voice and keep my covenant. All that Yehovah has spoken we will do. Well, Moses then went back up to the mountain right after they said that. And Yehovah gave him more instructions. Remember, this is the first day of the third month, the new moon day. He said, go to the people, consecrate them today and tomorrow. The first and the second. On the third day, let them be ready on the third day. I will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of the people. How is he going to be seen? In the cloud and in the smoke and in the fire. Listen to what he tells them to do. He says, let no man come near the mountain, whether man or beast. Look we're not talking about ladies, we're talking about Ish. There's only Ish there. And they're spiritually born Ish. Consecrate yourselves. Where did he say that? Here it is. Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow and let them wash their clothes. We got to be clean to meet with Yehovah. So now Moses comes back down. So Moses went down from the mountain. They washed their clothes. Sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready on the third day. Do not come near your wives. Do not come near your wives. What is that actually saying? It says, do not come near a woman. Do not come near a woman. Well, now this goes right back to what we saw in chapter 18, when all of a sudden, here is Jethro coming to Moses with his woman and her two sons, where? In the wilderness of Sinai. Here it is. And Jethro, Moses' father, came with his sons and his woman to the wilderness where he was encamped at the Elohim's mountain. Look what it says in Yasher. Reuel came to Moses in the wilderness where he was encamped, where was the mountain of Elohim. And Moses went forth to meet his father-in-law with great honor, and all Israel was with him. All Israel was with him, not the Ger, not their women, Israel, spiritually born men. Look what it says. And Reuel and his sons remained amongst the Israelites for many days, and Reuel knew Yehovah from that day forward. It appears to me that Moses' woman, Zipporah, went back to base camp, probably escorted back to base camp. The men who took her had to get back fast enough so that they could wash their clothes and be clean and ready to meet with Yehovah on the third day. Now, this is so interesting because we're getting ready to receive the commandments, which we're going to get today, from Yehovah. It's Israel's seed that's going to receive the word from Yehovah. Just like it was Israel's seed in chapter 16, let's go back there, who received the words of Yehovah, or received the bread from heaven that Yehovah sent. I want you to see some things here. This is very important that we see this. Remember, same chapter, this is the whole congregation of Israel's seed at Elim. But it's only Israel's seed that we're talking to right here. This is the thing which Yehovah has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's needs. 1 omer for each person, nephesh, according to the number of nephesh. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. Then Israel's seed, the Ezra men, did so and gathered. It was the men who gathered, no, it was the Ezra men who gathered the manna in the wilderness. You guys, if you will begin to understand who this Ezra man is, it's going to open up the scriptures for you. You're going to see in Psalms, he's always talking to the men. He's not talking to the ladies. In Proverbs, he's talking to the men. In the prophets, he's talking to the men. But he's specifically talking to Israel's seed, the spiritually born men. I'll continue. Then Israel's seed did sow and gathered, some more, some less. So when they measured it by omers, well, it's men, every man. It just says it over and over and over and over again. So now, today, actually we saw it last week. Let's go back to 19. Here it is. Then it came to pass on the third day, in the morning, that there was thundering and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very loud. So the people, Israel's seed, who were there in the camp trembled. And Yehovah brought the people out of the camp to meet with the Elohim. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Sinai was completely in smoke, because Yehovah descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And Moses spoke, and Elohim answered him by voice. How cool is that? The people heard Moses speak, and then heard the Elohim on the mountain speak to Moses. Well, he gave his commandments, but we don't know what he said yet. That is what we're going to talk about today. Let's go there. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying. Elohim spoke all these words. Who is it that he's going to speak to? We're going to see it again today. It's the Ezra man. One law shall be for the Ger, for the Ezra, and for the Ger who dwells with you. There's only two kinds of men in Israel. Spiritually born men, Ezra's seed, aka spirit children of Israel, Israel's seed, and the Ger who dwell with them. That's the heads of the families. That's all there is. Who is he speaking to when he does these things? Well, let me just give you a couple verses here. This is Yehovah speaking to Abraham. And maybe you can't see this. I don't know if I can get it over far enough. Oh, there it goes. I will make your descendants, your seed, multiply as the stars of heaven. Seed are men. This is who we're talking about. We take women, they give us more seed. I will give your descendants all these lands. It's the seed that gets the lands. Ladies don't get the land. We read about the daughters of Zelophehad. They got land because their father didn't have any sons, seed. But they had to marry people from the same tribe because the money, because the land was going to go to them. We miss it. We don't understand it. And in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. These aren't new laws that we're getting today. They're just being codified. They've always been. Let me read the rest. This is what Yashar has to say. And my son, Israel, and Israel's seed. That's my old note. Let me fix that. And Israel's. I've gone through an evolutionary process in refining my understanding about who B'nai Israel is. Let's go to verse 2. It says, verse 1 said, and Elohim spoke to these words, saying, this is what he's speaking. He's speaking to Israel's seed. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. I always like to write this, Yehovah, comma, your Elohim. It's code words. He's speaking to Israel's seed. They only have Yehovah as their Elohim. The Ger who dwell with us are following us. Our women are following us. Our children are following us. And our men servants and our maid servants are following us. Israel's seed, the Ezra men. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Remember that. Code words. Help us to see things more clearly. Who brought you out of the land of Egypt? We just saw it. 600,000 Gabor strong. Plus the heads of families who went with us. It even says, plus the heads of families who went with them. Israel's seed. They're not Israel's seed. They're the heads of the families that went with us. But this is very interesting because I am Yehovah, thy Elohim, is what it's saying here. See this right here? This kaf says the. Second person, masculine, singular. Singular. Now, this could be, remember, if we're talking about the Ezra, there is no plural form of Ezra. But I guess it works both ways. I think he's talking to each man individually. Because there's going to be a time here where he's going to talk to us in the second person masculine plural also. And that will be saying you. Now, you can't see it in the New King James. You can see it in the King James. And this is why the King James is kind of nice sometimes, helps us to see these things. I am Yehovah, thy Elohim, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. He brought us out. But we came out with our women and our children and our male and female servants and the Ger who dwell with us. This is the man, each man singular, who he is about to give his commandments to. We've got to understand this. Here, this is what we keep talking about. You know, I go back to this over and over and over again because I want you to see it. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Yehovah, my son, the Ezra man, my firstborn, second birth, that's the Ezra man, born a second time, spiritual birth, is Israel, spiritual men. Verse 3. He says, you shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. Ooh. I am Yehovah, thy Elohim, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Moses told Raul that he was going back to Egypt to get Israel's seed. You know, remember, Raul, Jethro, was a counselor to Pharaoh. Do you remember that? When he got a dream, it was Balaam who suggested that he talk to his counselors, Raul, Jethro, the Midianites, and Job, the Uzite, to see what they had to say. It was Raul who suggested that he not mess with them. Raul knew the power of Pharaoh, probably better than anybody in the camp, except Moses. But it was Raul, let me go to chapter 19 again, no, 18. It was Raul who said these words. And Jethro said, blessed be Yehovah, who has delivered you out of the hands of the Egyptians, out of the hands of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people, Israel's seed, from under the hand of the Egyptians. He says, now I know that Yehovah is greater than all the Elohim. All the Elohim. Ha Elohim. Just like we're talking about the Elohim on the mountain. Same word exactly. Except one's qualitative, one's quantitative. This is the quantitative. The Elohim on the mountain is the qualitative Elohim. He knows the power of these men. And it was Yehovah who delivered them. Now I know that Yehovah is greater than the Elohim. What Elohim? The Egyptians. What did they call those guys? The, Yasher had a really good one for saying it. I don't remember what it was. But they're the Elohim. These are the Elohim that we have been following for all these years. These are the Elohim that he is delivering us from. You know, sometimes I think we want to make Elohim idols. And honestly, I think Elohim can be idols. But this is not what we're talking about right here, because the second commandment is about the idols. We're talking about serving other lawmakers and judges. We're not supposed to serve other lawmakers and judges. This word gods or Elohim is not idols. That would be the second commandment, not the first. These Elohim are rulers and judges that we have covenanted with. Covenanted with. We have made covenants with, instead of only Yehovah. We owe an obligation to these men. Last time I was in court, they said, Your Honor, we have no control over this man. Why? Because I didn't have any covenants with them. No, here's the verse I just took you to. Jethro speaking to Moses says, now I know that Yehovah is greater than all the gods. For in the very thing that they behaved proudly, he was above them. Yes, they came. Remember, there was a group of men. That same word, I can't get that word. A group of men who were in Egypt, who came with a great number of the men of Egypt to bring us back. They couldn't. They came to Pharaoh after that, and it was Pharaoh finally who came the second time with almost 1 million men. They came the first time with 801,000 men. Then Pharaoh came with 1 million men, all the men of Egypt, his son. Remember, he says, if you don't let my son go, I will kill your son. And he did. He killed every one of them. Only Pharaoh was left. Now, why was I telling you that? The Elohim. They're the Elohim. Those men, Pharaoh, are the Elohim who kept us in bondage. They acted proudly. They thought we were going to... How come we let them go? Why did we let our servants go? Let's go after them. These are the men who died. I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. It says no other gods before me. You know, we get so confused when we talk about gods. Forget gods. Get rid of that word. It's not serving you well. Make it Elohim, lawmakers and judges, and your eyes will begin to open. Nobles, there it is, Pharaoh and all his nobles. It was the nobles of Egypt, the Elohim of Egypt, that went after us. Oh, I'm so glad I saw that word. I put Raul, Jethro knows firsthand how wicked these rulers and judges are. Yeah, he does. He lived with them. That's the first commandment. No other Elohim but me. When we read that, though, we think idols. Oh, well, I don't serve the sun god. I don't serve all these things. We're not talking about that. Here's the second commandment. You shall not make for yourselves any carved images. Carved images. Really, carved is even added. You shall not make unto thyself an image, any likeness, or anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. We've made images. We've served images. Sometimes Yehovah told us to make an image. I can think of one. It was that snake on the staff. Do you remember that snake on the staff? So Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. And so it was, if the serpent had bitten anyone, if the serpent had bitten anyone, I think it would probably should be serpents, had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Do you remember this? We, in years to come, started burning incense to this image. The brass serpent was called the Nakash, Nekoshet. Nakash, Nekoshet. And Moses made a Nakash, Nekoshet. And he put it on a pole, and it came to pass, if the serpent shall bite a man, ish, then behold the brass serpent. When he beholds the brass serpent, he shall live. Here's what happened. This is during Hezekiah's time. Hezekiah, removed the high places and broke down the sacred pillars. High places, sacred pillars, images. Cut down the wooden images and ground into dust the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until those days, Israel's seed burned incense to it and called it Nehushtan. Nehushtan, there's a definition of Nehushtan. Of copper, a bronze thing made of contempt, given to the serpent Moses had made in the wilderness. They destroyed this. We were worshiping it. We replaced the glory of Yehovah with something made by hand. Not supposed to do it. What are some of the other things that might be considered images? How about a cross? How about a cross with a man on it? Some of them. How about a flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag. The flag of a corporation? Do ya? I don't. Haven't for years. How about Mother Mary statues? Oh, we have so many things.
Jesus statues.
Yeah, well, I said the cross, Jesus statues, yeah. Yeah, Jesus statues. Yeshua statues. How about communion? Oh, treat that cup of blood carefully. The body of Christ. This is what we're talking about. These are images. Don't do it. He's going to tell us later on in this chapter what we're supposed to do. Don't make images. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yehovah, your Elohim, Ani, Yehovah, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons. Sons, not children, to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. Look it. Here's his sons. That's not children. Clearly sons to the third and fourth generation. But because we place these words, we get bad ideas. We make our women think they're something that they're not. Oh, Father, please help us, deliver us. We can't see the truth. Father, speak through me. I need your help. We need your light in this world. But showing mercy to thousands. You know what? I think that's thousands of generations. To those who love me and keep my commandments. But again, we're talking about sons, B'nai, seed. Third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of Yehovah thy Elohim in vain. For Yehovah will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. You know, for years I thought, GD has taken his name in vain. JC is taking his name in vain. No, it's not! Doctrines and traditions of men. Then I thought, well, maybe taking his name in vain is saying you're his when you're not. Wrong. Said that for years. No, taking his name in vain is swearing by his name and not doing what you said you would do. Look, here's a few verses, right side. You shall not take the name of Yehovah, your Elohim, in vain. thy Elohim in vain. For Yehovah will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. And you shall not swear by my name falsely. Don't swear by his name falsely. This is what we're talking about, taking his name in vain. Nor shall you profane the name of your Elohim, Ani Yehovah. One of the 300 times that it says, Ani Yehovah, I am Yehovah, giving authority to his word by his name. He says, you shall fear Yehovah, your Elohim, and serve him, and take oaths in his name. You know, for years I quoted the Bible verse. I went to court once and said, no, I'm not swearing. I was told not to swear. I was told not to swear. That's what we get in the New Testament. Wrong. Doctrines and traditions of men again. He says, and you shall take oaths in my name. What's his name? Yehovah. Yahweh. Whatever. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Look at this. Even Yehovah swears by his own name. It says even Yehovah makes oaths in his own name. Look at this. Genesis 22. And said, by myself have I sworn. By myself. Is there anything more surely going to happen than Yehovah swearing by his own name? Because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed, as the stars of heaven. Well, we read most of this morning. Here's another one. This is 32 of Exodus. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self. This is Moses talking to Yehovah and said, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven. When Elohim made a promise to Abraham because he could not swear by one greater, he swore by himself. Yehovah swears by his own name. Don't take his name in vain. If you're going to swear, swear by his name and do it. And it shall be, if they will learn carefully the words of my people, to swear by my name, as Yehovah lives. That's one way of saying it. As Yehovah lives, I will such and such. As they taught my people to swear by Baal, then isn't that what we do right now? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, not the truth, but so help you God? Who's that? Who's God? Is that possibly Baal? Then they shall be established in the midst of my people. But if they do not obey, well, here's David taking an oath. Then David took an oath again and said, your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he has said, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as Yehovah lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. Well, I don't remember what the whole story was involved in that, but I thought it was interesting that here's David swearing Yehovah lives, as Yehovah lives. Okay, fourth commandment. Here it goes. Who are we speaking to? Oh, here, I gotta go here for the fourth commandment. He says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do thy work. Let's ask ourselves the question, who is in the congregation of Israel right now? We saw that was Ezra and the Ger, but beyond that, further than that, we have the Ezra, we have the Ger, we have the Ezra's women, we have the Ger's women, we have the Ezra's children, we have the Ger's children, and we potentially have the Ezra's servants, male and female, and the Ger's servants, male and female. That's all that's there. There is nobody else there. There are no Egyptians there. They left. Joined themselves to Israel if they're a ger. So who is he speaking with? Let's take a look at this very carefully. So he says, 6 days thou shalt labor and do thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yehovah, there it is, Yehovah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt do no work. Thou, nor thy, here, I'm going to read here, right here. In it thou shalt do no work. Thou, nor thy son. The son can't be the thou, can he? Nor thy daughter can't be the thou. Thy male servant, thy female servant can't be the thou. Thy cattle, thy stranger can't be the thou, can it? And the stranger who is within thy gates. For 6 days Yehovah made the heavens and the earth, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th. Therefore Yehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. The only people left are the Ezra man and his woman. That's it. There's nobody else left. He's just eliminated all those people by saying thy daughter, thy son, thy ger. The only thing he didn't specifically mention is thy woman, did he? But he will. We're going to see it in the 10th commandment. I put the only people left are the Ezra man and his woman. But the 10th commandment eliminates her as well. Yehovah is talking only to his Ezra men. Completely consistent with everything that I've taught you so far. We miss it. We can't see it. We don't want to see it, some of us. It puts us in a different position than what we think we're in this world. I wanted to talk about this just briefly. Rested. Rested. The pictograph Nun is a picture of a seed representing continuance. The het is a picture of a wall that separates the inside from the outside. Combined, these mean continue outside. The shepherd would guide his flock to a place of water. Here is water for drinking, as well as green grass for pasturing. Once the flock arrives, they are free to rest after a long journey. A guided journey to a place of rest. A sigh of rest. Each week, we are continuing our journey towards Yehovah. But this is a day that we get to rest. Bask in the sun. Relax. Noah. Noah is the word that we're talking about. Noah. Okay, 5th commandment. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving thee. Who gets the land? The Ezra men are the only one that get the land. We'll see that in Numbers. 600,000. Number them, all the men. When we numbered them, that's how many we got. It's those men that are going to get the land in Israel when we go there 40 years later. Well, their sons anyway, but they're still Ezra men. Little things. You know, that's another context clue. The land Yehovah is giving you. Doesn't give the ger land, doesn't give the ladies land, doesn't give the children land, gives the Ezra men land. Context clues. He says honor. Here it is. Kabod. Kabod. Or kavod. Give, it says heavy, to be heavy. Give weight, in a sense. Give weight to thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. We don't obey our mother and father once we leave, but we still give weight, we still give honor to our mother and father. They're our mother and father. Here, I put together this thing. Kavod, give weight. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son, funny it doesn't say daughter, it says son, who will not obey the voice of his father and the voice of his mother, and who, when they chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders of the city. Look at that. His father and his mother are going to take hold of him, bring him to the elders of the city. And they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He's a glutton and a drunkard. Then the ish of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you. And all Israel shall hear and fear. Israel, the Ezra men, all the Ezra men will hear and fear. Hopefully their sons will hear and fear too. Here, it says, speak to Israel, speak to the congregation of Israel's seed and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, Yehovah, your Elohim, am holy. Every man of you shall fear his father and fear his mother and father, and keep my Sabbaths. Ani, Yehovah, thy Elohim. Kavod, here it is. Weight, heavily, to be heavy, to be honored, to be made heavy, to get honor, to make dull, to let weight down, to let way down. Here, this is the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible. He says honor, heavy, someone or something that is heavy in weight, wealth, abundance, importance, or respect. The hand of both humans and Elohim were described metaphorically as heavy, that is powerful. All right, well, let's continue. 6 commandments. Thou shalt not murder. You know, when you look at this, look at this. This is the 6th commandment. It's 2 words. Lo. Rashak. Rashak. Really, if you look at just this word right here, this is got the tav in front of it. It says, you shall. You shall. You shall. So this is you shall rashak. But because it says lo, that is the negation of this word, lo rashak. You shall not murder. What is the difference between, I hear this all the time. People are critical of the scriptures because they're ignorant. They don't understand what Yehovah is actually saying. He says, thou shalt not murder. He's not saying thou shalt not kill. There's lots of places we just talked about stoning our sons, rebellious, gluttonous sons. There's places where we're going to kill the Rashak, the person who is the murderer. I want to show you some words to help clarify what's going on here. He wants us, thou shalt not Rashak. We're going to talk about the Rashak, the man who kills somebody, who lies in waits and kills somebody, is the Rashak. That man is going to die. But there's a man who kills somebody by accident. As it were, Yehovah putting him into your hands. Didn't mean to kill him. The axe slipped. Car accidents. Whatever. He goes to a place of refuge. And he stays there the rest of his life. Let's look at a couple verses. This is Samuel 15, 2 and 3. Thus says Yehovah of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt. Hear this? This is the Rashak. A whole country was the Rashak. How he ambushed him, Israel, on the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek. Remember, the avenger of blood goes after the Rashak. And utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them. He says, kill, moot. What's the Spanish word for death? Morte. That's where we get this word, moot. Kill him. Kill both man and woman, infant, nursing child, ox, sheep. Destroy the whole nation. They were the Rashak. Yehovah wanted them to remember, they are the seed of Esau. Wicked men of the flesh, always have been. Kill both man and woman. Oh, look at that. Man and woman, infant. They're enumerating the women, aren't they? Isn't that interesting? Well, here's another word for murder. Well, I guess this is the same word, Rashak, murder. An unjustifiable killing or slaughter. Whoops. Here's moot, die, mortality. The pictograph mem is a picture of water representing chaos. And the cross, the tav, is a picture of two cross sticks representing the mark or sign. Combined, they mean chaos, mark, moot. The avenger of blood himself shall put the Rashak, there it is, Rashak, to moot. The avenger of blood, that's our job. When he meets him, he shall put him to moot. If he pushes him out of hatred, or while lying in wait, hurls something at him so that he dies, moot. Or in enmity, he strikes him with his hand so that he dies, moot. The one who struck him shall surely be put to death, moot. He is a Rashak. The avenger of blood shall put the Rashak to moot when he meets him. Now you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of Israel's seed, of the congregation of Israel, shall kill. Now here's another word, shakat. I see this word shakat being used when we're talking about animals, and moot. And this word, next word we're going to talk to when we're talking about men. Here's the other word for killing. So I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill, here it is, harag, thy son, thy firstborn. Turns out it's all the men of Egypt, just like it was all the men of Israel. Let them all go, or I will kill your son. That's the word we're talking about, harag. When we're talking about wiping out, came into the promised land. We were killing and taking that land for ourselves. The word that we're talking about is harag. Thou shalt not rashak. That is murder. We're told lots of times to kill the wicked. But this is not killing. This is not committing murder. Let's say it right. This is not committing murder. We're not to commit murder. Lying in wait. Well, let's continue. That was the 6th commandment. Here's the 7th commandment. Oh my goodness. You shall not commit adultery. Again, 2 words. 2 words. Na'af. Na'af. Lo na'af. You shall not commit adultery. You know what? I don't think there's hardly a commandment that is more misunderstood than this one in particular. We see it in practically every video we watch, in the newspapers, in the books. Remember, who's he talking to? Thou shalt not commit adultery. He's talking to the Ezra men. Each one individually. This instruction is about a man sleeping with another man's woman. That is adultery. That's it. Listen to what he says. Just listen to some of these verses. You'll begin to see it. The man who commits adultery with another man's woman. He who commits adultery with his neighbor's woman. The adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. The woman doesn't commit adultery. The man commits adultery. He who does so destroys his own soul. If a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband of Baal, then both of them shall die. The man that lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall put away the evil from Israel. Here's another one. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside and forces her and lies with her, only the man who lay with her shall die. Isn't that interesting? This is a betrothed woman. A betrothed woman is treated the same way as a married woman. It's an adulterous relationship to take a betrothed woman. If you're not the man. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when the man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out. Did she cry out? They said he did. Cried out, but there was no one to save her. Talking about a betrothed young woman. We're not talking about a man taking a single woman. That's a woman playing the harlot. Oh, there's so much more for us to see. If you go to my teaching, here, let me go to it. You can find this right here, Creation of Man, Adultery, number 2. It's called Polygyny versus Adultery, or Polygamy. Oh, this is so important that we begin to understand these concepts. Let me go back. I really encourage you to read this. But let me go back to my topic notes. And I think I've got multiple women, probably. M-U-L. Multiple women, yes. Polygamy is a man-made deception, a sleight of hand to turn us away from polygyny, say that word, polygyny, it's hard to remember this word, polygamy, polygyny, which is part of Yehovah's eternal and unchanging plan. This is one of those topics that we find difficult to understand with our Babylonian minds. All the training that we receive from the movies. I would just like to point out the following technical points for the sake of better understanding. Here is polygamy. 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 Gam. Spouse. The condition or practice of having more than one spouse at a time. A spouse is part of the legal definition for marriage. When we get married with a marriage certificate, we are in a spousal relationship. And by implication, will include same-sex marriages, spouses. This is why they can do that right now. And thus not in line with Yehovah's word, what Yehovah's word teaches. Well, polygyny, the condition or practice is having more than one woman at a time. In Greek, poly means multiple, and gune means woman. When we talk about the GYN that a woman goes to see, that is the woman doctor. This is why I say Yehovah's word does teach. Here, I want to read this to you. You've got to understand this. Thou shalt not commit adultery. How many marriages have been destroyed because the woman heard that her husband had taken another woman, single woman, called it adultery? Maybe he even thought it was adultery. Was it adultery? Or was it doctrines and traditions of men? We're going to see, not today, it's too late for today, but we're going to see next week, when a man takes another woman, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. Let me continue in this. This distinction between polygamy and polygyny, the same word that the GYN doctor comes from, while subtle, has huge implications. A couple legally married with a state marriage license is in a spousal relationship between the state, one man, and one woman. It's a three-way relationship. And the head of that relationship is not the man. It is the state. That's why the state can take away your children. In this relationship, the man's Elohim, the state, says that the polygamy, multiple spouses, is illegal. They can do that. They're the Elohim. They're the lawmaker and judge that you submitted to when you got the marriage license. Incidentally, all the offspring that come from this relationship ultimately belong to the state, who can take any or all of them from you. But the man who does not have a covenant with the state, usually through a driver's license, and has not asked the state's permission to be legally married, by applying for and receiving a marriage license, that man simply has more than one woman in his life, or polygyny, polygyny, and they are lawfully married under Yehovah. There is not a state in the country that will not recognize a marriage covenant. Well, I knew there was a reason why I call polygamy the P word. That's what it is. It's the P word. It's a bad word. Don't be involved in polygamy by getting a marriage license. That's how you get involved with it. Now I see that it is the evil word and is like flies in the face of Yehovah's eternal and unchanging ways. Look at, here it is. We'll talk about this next week. If he takes another woman, he shall not diminish his food, clothing, or marital rights. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, then they have borne him children. Both the loved, well, this case is a son. A son. We're talking about the heir at this point. Both the loved and the unloved. And if the firstborn, the Bekor's son, is of her who is unloved, then it shall be on the day he bequeaths his possessions to his sons. There it is. Bestow firstborn status on the son of the loved woman in preference to the son of the unloved, the true firstborn. We're talking about having multiple wives, aren't we? But he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved woman as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of what he has. For he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. Most people have no clue as to what adultery actually is. Instead, their theology comes from the doctrines and traditions of men. Please, we've got to understand what adultery is. It's not about a woman committing adultery. It's about the man committing adultery with another man's woman. Oh, Father, help us to see and understand the importance of this. I encourage you to read that article on my blog. Okay, let's go back to the New King James. This will be the 8th commandment. He says, you shall not steal. Again, 2 words. You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. And you shall not swear by my name falsely. All these have to do with lying, don't they? Lie to one another, deal falsely, stealing. Nor shall you profane the name of your Elohim, Ani Yehovah. I am Yehovah. 8th commandment. Here's the 9th. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. False witness against your neighbor. This one is 19:16. Let me read this to you in here. It says, you shall not, no, you probably can't see it. Here, let me do this. Here it goes. You shall not go about as a talebearer among your people, nor shall you take a stand against the life of your neighbor. The life of your neighbor. Take a stand against the life of your neighbor. It almost makes it sound like we're not supposed to be a witness against our neighbor if he does something bad. Isn't that a little bit what it sounds like? You shall not take a stand against the life of your neighbor. I like how the Basic Bible in Basic English wrote it. He says, do not go about saying untrue things among your people, or take away the blood, is actually the blood, the dam, of your neighbor by false witness. They added by false witness, but I think it's there. Look what it says about in the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. It says one shall, this is probably Deuteronomy 19:15-21. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. Did you hear that? By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. Oh, my husband said he slept with another woman. Is that the witnesses? Is that even a sin? Was the woman married? See, there's so many other things. When Yeshua, remember they brought the woman caught in adultery. Woman caught in adultery. Who was the witnesses? Remember, the witnesses threw the first stone. Did anybody throw a stone? No. Why? Because they didn't see it. And if they did, where's the man? You see, we learn so many things and we take these stories and we build a theology based on it. But we miss the truth of the whole story because we don't know the Torah. Look at what it says. If a false witness arises against any man, this is what we're talking about now. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You're still going to bear witness if you saw it. If a false witness arises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoings, then both men in the controversy shall stand before Yehovah. Why both men? Because there's at least two witnesses. Shall stand before Yehovah, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. If you're standing before the priests and his judges, you're standing before him, Yehovah. And the judges shall make careful inquiry, and indeed, if the witness is a false witness who has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil from among you. Who's you? Israel. And those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter they shall not again commit such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. This is more than just a murderous thing. This is for all kinds of things. Two men in a fight. One gets an eye knocked out. But here, remember, if you're getting in a fight and you knock out another man's eye, you have to have your eye knocked out. But what if you didn't? Well, maybe that's an extreme because obviously you would see if the man had his eye knocked out. But if these witnesses are saying, yeah, he lost his eye, but he really didn't lose his eye, they're going to lose their eye. Because they're bearing false witness. It's going to come on them. If they're condemning him of murder or saying he's a murderer, it's going to fall on them. They're going to be killed. Well, here's the last one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's woman, nor his servant, his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Look at this. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's woman. All these, the house, the woman, the male servant, the female servant, the ox, the donkey, or anything that is thy neighbor's, are thy possessions. Did you hear that? This has two implications. One, a woman is a possession of the thou. She's his. Bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. My hand is mine. But it also is telling us that it's not saying, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's man. What is it saying? It's saying that he's talking to the Ezra man. Remember, we had one relationship left in who the thou was. Remember, we said it had to be the Ezra man, or it could be the woman, because it didn't mention the woman above. Thou shalt do no work. Thou, thy son, thy male servant, thy female servant, thy daughter, the ger who dwells with us, all eliminated, but the woman. Now here's the woman. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's house, thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's woman. Thou is the Ezra man. It's the only one left. And again, completely consistent with everything that I've been trying to show you about the manna, about who Israel's seed is. Now all the people, who are the people we're talking about? The Ezra men. They're the ones who are at the mountain right now. Witness the thundering, the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, and the smoking, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. And they said to Moses, "Thou shalt speak for us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die." This is the people speaking. This is the Ezra men speaking. And Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for thee Elohim has come to test you, and that his fear may be before you." Here it is. This is the plural you. Here it is. Imperfect second person masculine plural. With the tav and the vav underneath it is saying you, y'all, y'all. Like they say in the South, like Veronica always likes to say, y'all. Do not fear, for thee Elohim has come to test you, and that his fear may be before you, so that you may not sin. I put these men were terrified. It is a healthy thing to know the fear of Yehovah. Yes, it is. Well, now Moses is going to go back up the mountain. This is the third time that he's gone up to the top of the mountain. No, the fourth time. Oh, let's count it. We had I take it back. That was in the last chapter. Yeah, this is the fourth time. At least the fourth time. Because that was the last chapter that we went up there, up and down 3 times. Where were we? So, the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near to the thick darkness where Elohim was. No, where the Elohim was. The Elohim. Moses is returning to the mountain. Then Yehovah said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to Israel's seed," the Ezra men, "You have seen," this is again plural you, plural yous, "you have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make anything to be with me." Hear that? You shall not make anything to be with me. God's Elohim of silver, Elohim of gold. This is Elohim. Elohi, same thing. Elohi, silver Elohi, gold Elohi. You are not to make for yourselves. But look at what he says. This is what we're not. This is what we are not to do. But now look at what he says you are to do. The very next verse. This is what we are to make. And now this is singular use that he's doing. Imperfect means shall, you shall do this. Second person masculine singular. An altar of earth. You know what? I want to read it here. An altar of earth. Thou shall make to me, and thou shalt slaughter on it thy olah and thy shalamim. Hear this? This is Yehovah speaking to us, telling us that an altar of earth thou shalt make to him. I've made an altar of earth. Haven't slaughtered anything on it yet. I need to. I've talked about it for ages, but I have the altar made. This is a commandment. An altar of earth thou shalt make to me, and thou shalt slaughter on it. They say sacrifice. It's not sacrifice, it's slaughter. The word is zavik. Zavik. This is something that we're going to eat. Now the olah we're not going to eat. It's going to be completely destroyed, burned up. It's a rising. Olah is all about rising. It's the thing that's going up into the air. The shalamim is something that we're going to eat. Thy flocks and thy cattle, in all the places my name shall be remembered. The word here we're talking about is zakar. Shall be remembered. It shall be remembered. His name. I will come to thee and bless thee. When we build an altar to Yehovah and do our olah or our shalamim on it. Shalamim, thy flocks and my cattle. We don't have to do a shalamim with the birds, but we can do an olah offering with the birds. That's what I would have to use. In all the places my name shall be remembered, I will come to thee and bless thee. That's a promise. Yehovah will come to us and bless us. This is what Abraham did. This is what Isaac did. This is what Jacob did. Is this what we're supposed to do? This is what he just commanded us. And what did he say? You shall not do. Look at it again. You shall not make anything. You shall not make with me Elohim of silver, Elohim of gold. You shall not make for yourselves. You shall make to me an altar of earth. An altar of earth. We got to do that. I talk about this in some of the writings that I do. In my long series on this one here, eating clean, I have one for meat slaughtered to idols. Meat sacrificed to idols. I use that word for one specific reason, and that is search engine optimization, to get people to it. Not many people search for meat sacrificed to idols, but if they do, they're going to find me. One of the articles in this series, I talked about an altar to Yehovah. This is important that we have these, because if we're going to eat our goats, if we're going to eat our sheep, we can put the blood on the altar. This is what we do when we bring our meat to the temple. Our shalamim offering. We're going to talk about the shalamim offering, about the second or third chapter of Leviticus. He goes on. And if you make an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone. For if you use your tool on it, you have profaned it. I had to make an altar of earth because I just cannot find a single stone in this area that I live right now. I'd much rather have an altar of stone. He says, nor shall you go up by steps to my altar, that your nakedness may not be exposed on it. Well, this is chapter 20. These are the words that Yehovah spoke to his Ezra men. Now, this last portion was to Moses. Remember, he went up to the mountain. He's still in the mountain. He hasn't come back down yet. He went up in verse 21. Fourth time up. It says he went up. I think Joshua went with him. Joshua was supposed to go with him the next time. Did he? No, actually, I think they said Aaron was supposed to go with him. That was totally weird, because Aaron didn't go with him. Joshua went with him. Where did we see that last week? Do you remember that? Yeah, it said that the next time he comes up, that here. Then Yehovah said to him, away, get down, then come up, you and Aaron with you. You and Aaron with you? He didn't come up with Aaron. Aaron's the one who built the altar of the golden calf. The very thing that he told us not to do. You shall not. Oh, man. What is going on? Well, that's a story for another day also. Because we're going to see that Aaron built that altar under duress. But how come he brought Joshua up and not Aaron? Maybe if he had brought Aaron up, Aaron wouldn't have built the golden calf. Joshua wouldn't have built the golden calf. Well, all these are things that we can just theorize on, isn't it? Well, let's stop here. Again, next week, look at what's going to happen next week. We're going to start chapter 21. Chapter 21 has got some very interesting things. It's a lot of individual, what I would call ordinances. It says these are the judgments. There's judgments, there's ordinances. If a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, if a man takes another woman, if he who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. He who strikes his father and his mother, he who kidnaps a man, he who curses his father or mother, he who contends if a man contends with each other, and one strikes the other. If a man beats his male or female servant with a rod. Oh, wait till you see that one. You're going to be appalled. You know, some of the things that we have learned, doctrines and traditions of men, fly in the face of what Yehovah says. Sometimes it may seem cruel, but this is what Yehovah is saying. Talks about notwithstanding, if he remains alive for 2 or 3 days, he shall not be punished, for he is his property. He is his property. What is his property? His house, his woman, his male, his female servant, his ox, or anything that is his neighbor's. That has implications, doesn't it? Oh, man alive. So hard to see the truth. Well, we're going to work on it next week. Thank you for joining me today. You are loved. I'm grateful that you've been here listening to what I have to say. Please continue to come back. We're going to see so much more as we begin our journey in the wilderness. We're just starting it today. We just got to Rephidim. We're going to be in Rephidim for a whole year. We're going to get our priesthood put together. We're going to build the tabernacle to Yehovah. We're going to build the altar to Yehovah. The gold one. The bronze altar. We're going to build the testimony, the ark of the testimony. Oh, very interesting. We're going to build it from the inside out, not the outside in. Everybody else builds it from the outside in. We're going to build it from the inside out. Isn't that interesting? That's how we build Yehovah's word in our life. On the inside. And then we work it out on the outside. Well, hey, thank you for joining me. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.